to the Social Changemakers podcast. I'm Khalilah Denney, here with a group of wonderful individuals, but what I'm going to do is turn it over to Q to introduce everyone.
I'm Q. This is
Khalilah.
Ayana.
Adele.
LaShonda.
And today we're going to be doing something a little different. So y'all see we got food. I got Chick-fil-A. Miss Denny has
Chicken nuggets.
Soup.
From the Holy Chicken. Holy Chicken.
I want to spill my fries. I got the spicy deluxe.
I
have the hot and spicy cup of noodle soup.
So today we're going to be talking about this development and the different things that impact child growth. So what do y'all think is the critical age for development?
Critical age for development?
Yeah.
As in what? Like, you're saying, what's a critical age when somebody develops more?
Yeah.
They say most males don't mature until they over what? Like 20?
Their brains finish maturing at
25.
26 or 25.
Over 25, yeah.
For me, I would say critical age for development, at least where you want to get them the earliest, I would say 8.
So those are, you say 8, you say 25. Why do you say 8 so early?
I say because you want to start, I say 8 because I think you want to start as early as possible framing their development.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait until they're in high school and then try to change their thought process or, habits or things like that, it may be a lot harder. It's doable, but it's a lot harder. So if we start early with molding and, shaping the way that youth or young people think and act and, the access to the opportunities, the earlier you do that, the better, I think.
So why do you guys say late then?
Also, are we talking mental or physical?
Mental. Mental. That's a good question. Yeah, we're talking about mentally.
I think earlier too, as far as when we were talking about the 25, that was just like the brain stops developing at 25, and so I think it's all the things that need to go into development. I think it's even as early as like 2 or 3 to be intentional because they're observing a lot then, and so they're seeing what you do, they see what's around, they hear. They might not be acting in a certain way yet, but this is where they're developing like how they're going to act around certain things. So I feel like even earlier.
I think it's a good point. I think.
Yeah.
Did you want to chime in?
No, I'm just saying I agree with you when you say 1 or 2 because that's when they do start learning and observing everything. So.
But they say babies are sponges.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, I actually agree with the younger because they say it's easier to learn things. Like teach people, like they say, teach your kids multiple languages when they're younger because they'll grasp it. Like it's fun.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Especially when it comes to the multiple languages, because when Khalil was younger, when he was born, I would say he was being watched over by a Spanish-speaking individual. And he understood what she was saying, and he could comprehend. And if I would have kept him on that route, I think he'd probably be speaking 2 languages right now. Yeah. So that's a good observation.
So I think what it has to do with the development also has to do with the parenting. So what do y'all think gentle parenting looks like?
Gentle parenting in the Black community. What does that look like?
Non-existent.
Well, I guess it just depends on the environment, right?
Yeah.
I think what it looked like for me today as a parent versus what it looked like as a child being parented, totally 2 different things. So I was not parented gently, if that makes sense. We got whoopings, we got hollered at, If your mama talking and you start, your mama talking and you start talking and she having a conversation, it's over. It's a wrap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think gentle parenting for me right now is still an issue for me to have my kids just in the middle of a conversation, but it's not. The world's not over when it happens. I allow my kids to have more of a voice. I'm not a spanker. I think the fact that I don't spank my kids is a form of gentle parenting. We start out with a tone that is normal and should be, received, but sometimes you got to elevate that tone, and I think that kind of blurs the lines.
So why don't you spank your kids?
Because I don't think it's effective.
I agree with you on that because, you know, I have a 1-year-old and he, like, if he see, like, if I try to pop him or anything, he will do the same thing back. This is really a reflection. So it's just like, you're just basically teaching them to do something, you know, violently.
I also believe that because in my mind, butt whooping didn't do anything for me but made me more aggressive. Like
Mhm.
I was more of the type to what's the word?
Rebel against
Rebel.
it.
I was more resent. Like you punish me, now I'm gonna do something worse. 10 times worse. Because just whooping me ain't it's only making me mad.
Yeah, I feel you on that because when I was younger, that whooping would set me straight. Like I would be like, I can't get a whooping. I can't get. So like one day I was in
You got
school.
whippers.
I got whooping. My parents are Caribbean, so I got broad belt whooping. So one time I was in school and there was a substitute and she changed my color to red. She changed everybody's color to red just because she was in that mood. I went to her in front of the whole. I'm like, listen, I don't know where you're from. But if I go home with my red, I won't be coming back tomorrow. I'll be in the oven. I'll be cooked. I'm done for. So she had to make my color right then and there.
Because mom and dad ain't played.
But as I got older, like if somebody, I mean, whooping stopped. But like if you tried to punish me when I got older, I feel you like oh I just do worse. So it became like
I've been threatened to be whooped in front of a class before.
You've been threatened to be whipped.
that's threatening you with the class.
You wasn't trying to make it come. You wasn't trying to see it come true though, right?
Yeah, I think I definitely whoopings were a threat. I did get a few. I think I was the only one of my sisters that did. Actually, there's 3 of us, and it was me. And I think like I hated it when it was happening. I hated the threat of it, but I also like still did the stuff that got me whooped in the first place, and it still didn't keep me from continuing. So I think it's just really the matter of like what's the point of it? I think there are times where it gets out of hand. I think there's how you're raised around it, like you're saying, like I just the thought of it scared me too much, so I wasn't going get to that point. So I think but then there's also the other side where it does teach you to respond with violence and that it's okay, because I think with kids and talking about the age of development, there's not always the clear line of understanding where it's like, well, it was okay for me to hit you because of this, but it's not okay. It's not okay for me to hit, so just that understanding that line between when it's okay, when it's not, is not easy for kids. And so I think as parents,
No, opening the door, but it's okay. It's okay.
but yeah, I think as parents, just understand or recognizing that kids don't really see that line, and then you get frustrated. Why do you keep doing the same thing? You got a whooping for it last time. It's like, well, I'm not connecting all that. I don't understand what you hit me, so that means I can hit. So it's just again understanding that development.
Well, I know. For me, I was the one like if you beat me, I'm running. So I never wanted to get beat, but I was bad because I was just angry all the time. But when I get a butt whooping, if you leave me alone for too long, you're gonna come back and find me gone. That was my response. Was just to run away.
So another aspect of gentle parenting would be like telling your children reality versus fairy tales. So do y'all believe in telling your children fairy tales or make believe things? Y'all think that's good for childhood
Like
development?
like Santa Claus type.
Yeah,
of
like
thing,
Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the
Sorry
Tooth
for anyone who
Fairy.
just found out that Santa's not real.
I feel like it's
Made it worse
okay
for
to a
everybody.
certain extent.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
So
Obviously.
what does it look like?
As far as like the Santa Claus, it's like when they're young, they don't really know better. So it's just like you could tell them that, and it's like they'll get to a point where you'll have a conversation like, oh this. But it's like then it's like I don't know, because it's like you can really mess up
The trust
they
issues.
trust, like, yeah. So it's like It'll be good to tell the truth,
Did
but
your parents tell you? Did your parents say, Santa Claus was real?
no.
Anybody? Anybody here?
Not,
Parents told
not
them?
so I believed it. Like my mom
Yeah.
would like make me write from Santa Claus on the gift that I just wrapped for myself from her. Like
Yeah.
And then catch them in the middle of the night, wrapping presents.
yeah.
Like, yeah, the gift would say from Santa, like, days before Christmas. Like, Santa didn't come yet.
Right.
and I would see my dad dressed up as Santa, so it was really like...
So, I'm glad you said it like that because for me,
Santa ain't black. And
Santa in my house is black. Every Santa that came to my house was black. So, the reason why I say that is because I've always told my kids Santa is just as real as me and your dad is, right? Because me and your dad are Santa Claus. I didn't want to take the excitement and enjoyment of there being a Santa Claus, whatever, from them, but I didn't want to give them any indication that I believe that there's this magical, person that's gonna come down the.
So what about like
chimney.
the tooth fairy or like the Easter bunny? Same concept?
My kids today, to this day, will bring me their tooth
He
and
just
say,
did that.
"Did you right?
He just did.
Is there gonna be $5 under my pillow?" Because we are Santa Claus. We are the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
But we still indulge them. Like I would still put $5 under the tooth.
Yeah.
I think it's still
It
just
keeps them.
that. Yes.
Innocent.
It keeps them. Yeah, innocent and they're child like.
Right. I
that's
think
good.
about this year. I helped wrap my friend's gifts for his kids, and for the ones that were on their list to Santa for his daughter, particularly because she's younger, I put from Santa. But the ones he got himself, I put from Dad. But the balance between from Santa and from Dad was like heavier. So like when we were opening gifts, they'd be like, "Oh, from Dad." Again. She didn't put that on her list of Santa, so why would I say it was from Santa? But those are like the kind of the mixing the reality with the keeping the fantasy alive. And like also you saw us put the big red bag of gifts into the car, even though you didn't know what was in it, but she was still excited even about that. So
Yeah.
the idea of just kind of keeping the innocent. But my parents, like I never wholeheartedly believed in Santa, but I also like didn't not because Christmas is still my favorite holiday to this day.
It's mine too. So my question, I wonder with you guys who don't have kids yet, how do you think you're gonna how are you gonna approach that situation when you have children?
For me, I do want to maintain a level of innocence. So like with my mother, she told me it's an age for everything. So there was certain limits where she limited me to know certain things, and then as I got older, she made me see the reality of certain things. But I'm not gonna say it is like you say. I'm not gonna say it is some magical man flying around the air on reindeers and just dropping presents
in the sleigh, the Rangers pull the sleigh.
presents in your chimney. Well, say, like you said, we are Santa. We are the Tooth Fairy. We make it happen. So,
but you're gonna give them the satisfaction of
waking
up with money under the pillow, right?
Yeah, I feel as though I'm like a little in the middle because like I want them to know what working hard gets. So, like I'm working hard so that y'all can have these gifts under the tree. But at the same time, when they're that young, they won't really understand that regardless.
They just want the gift.
They just want the gift. Like, and they don't really care about the gift. They just want to open the paper.
They don't care if it came down the chimney or if Amazon delivered it. They just want.
Especially now, they know Amazon. Well, Santa, so
right.
So we talked about getting whooping. So what's the line between discipline and abuse? What do y'all think?
Who want to take that?
Cause I would, me personally, I would never say I was abused, but I did get a whooping. But I feel like it was well deserved.
I got whooped after I got out the shower. I got whooped with
Man.
I got whooped with
Pants pulled down, underwear. Yeah.
Got whooped by naked.
That's a whooping.
That's what I done
Well,
got 30
sure.
minutes.
If you run,
Run,
that's
don't
gonna make it
run.
worse.
Don't run, don't jump. You just got
Don't move.
Move your
I remember one time I had bunk beds in the room, and I was running from whooping, and I ran and jumped on the top bunk. Where are you gonna go?
We're done.
Where are you going to go? It's over.
You played yourself.
You wear double
My friend, yeah, there's the ones where you're prepared for, like, it's
Yes.
like, all right, after church.
You
And
know
I'm
you
like,
about to
okay,
get it with me.
I'll get home. I'm gonna put on a few layers, put on a few things. But yeah, that one, my friend to this day still, like, when we're all together, she's like, remember that time? Because one of our friends I grew up with was at the house. She's still like, remember that time you running down the top bunk? Okay, sure.
But discipline, I mean, the line between abuse and discipline, I don't think like adults really, some people don't understand their power. So they don't realize how hard they hit you. Or sometimes they're just letting out frustration, like they could have had a long day. And now they releasing this form of frustration on you and don't really realize the damage that they're doing upon you. Abuse is just somebody who just don't care.
Yeah, I feel like it has to do with the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the intent behind it?
And what they explain, I think there's also like manipulation around like, because they can tell you like you're getting whooped because you did something wrong, but not having an understanding or setting the precedent. So like I knew the things I would get whooped for. So it was never like, oh shoot, I'm suddenly getting in trouble for this thing. Like I knew what the lines I shouldn't cross are. And I think so there's that level of understanding the difference between abuse, because then there are people that just come home and they're angry and they're hitting you, or the way they're hitting you and when they don't stop, or the types of bruises they leave and things like that.
Well, I don't think it stops there either. I think a lot of times when we think of abuse, we always think about physical.
And
I think there's this verbal and mental abuse that we deal with as well. Because as LaShonda said, a lot of times you can get manipulated just by someone's words, and the manipulation can turn into abuse, especially if they're like gaslighting you. People who are always talking down, telling you you're never going to do this, you're never going to be anything, or you always do it wrong, and I don't see you doing it right, or so the way we communicate can be abusive as well. And a lot of times you have more people who are suffering from that verbal abuse than they are the physical, and it can be just as bad, if not worse, because now you're taking away, you're chipping away at their self-esteem, and that right there can cause, especially young people, to do some things that they wouldn't necessarily do because they don't believe in themselves or they don't have anyone to believe in them. So that verbal abuse is just as, if not worse, to experience.
So do you think that violent communication hinders growth?
I think so. I think violent communication takes away from the safe space. I think violent communication, will stop someone from being their 100% authentic self because they're afraid of what the backlash may be, what you may say or what may happen. So if someone's abused or feel like they're being abused, because it could look different for everybody, right? But if you don't feel safe in your space or in a situation, you're not gonna give it your all. You're not gonna be the person that you would be if you felt safe. That's my opinion. What do you guys think about it?
I agree. I definitely agree with you because it is a lot of verbal, not even violence. I would say like communication, violence. Yeah, it's a lot of that goes on, and it, like you said, messes up people's self-esteem and makes them feel like they're not good enough, and it also causes depression. So
yeah, it can cause depression, suicide. Yeah.
Especially with it being Mental Health Awareness Month, I think.
Yeah, that plays a huge part in the suicidal area.
And I think a lot of times we forget that, and I'm speaking from a parental perspective, and I have to remember that my kids, though they're young, they still have feelings, they still have emotions, and a lot of times we expect our young people to depress that or keep it to themselves or be more mature with their emotions than we are. You know what I mean? And I think that's another reason that they are a lot of times lashing out. You know what I mean? My boys are 12 and one's about to be 10. And I see the difference when they're able to, express themselves when they're angry and they're crying and they're frustrated and being able to express that frustration versus when they're being told to suppress it and the difference it has in their confidence and the way they communicate and how they move, So I know it's hard as a parent to not butt in or jump in or tell your kids, okay, you gotta be quiet, you be a man or whatever. But I've been noticing that I think it's more important for my child's development, my boys' development as men, to let them have their emotions, let them experience them, but then maybe share with them the different techniques that they could have used after the fact. You know what I mean? Yeah. Versus trying to tell them how to act in the moment.
So, with that being said, we're talking a lot about the negative. So, let's talk about a little bit about the positive and like positive reinforcement. So, do y'all think that works? And do y'all think it creates a reward system? As in, oh, I have to, if I do this, I'll get this, or I only do good in order to get something in return.
I think there is a balance to it. So we don't have human children, but but even just in general, just in my experience,
you can talk about your fur babies.
Babies, but when you're training a dog, part of it is the rewards that you give. Eventually, you transition those rewards out, but they still have the behavior, and I think it's very similar.
I think it is.
Sorry, guys, but I think it is similar with kids. Like, in elementary school, just like earlier, you're talking about the red, green, yellow card. Like, that was to train you or reinforce the behavior that's good versus behavior that is not acceptable in class. So in middle school, you don't get a yellow, green, or red card, but you know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's definitely something, even at home, where you're thinking about chores, like, if you're not part of getting kids to even learn how to do the chore, is like you have to reward them so they could get into the practice of it. And this is,
or make it fun.
Yeah, you make it fun, but getting them into the practice of it, of like, okay, this is how we do it. It can be fun. It can get you to this point, but hopefully when you leave my house, you don't live in a pigsty, or you know how to wash your clothes, or you know what you're supposed to do, because we've worked on it so much at home. And part of it was like, you have your set of chores and your teaching responsibility. It's just like our jobs. How many of us would really go to our jobs if we weren't getting paid, right? And there are some of us that enjoy our jobs. I'm not saying because y'all all work for the Denney house and you have to pay it. But just blink twice if you need help. No, but for the majority of people who are working in America, like, they're going to work because they need to get a paycheck. And so it's not like, there's anything wrong with it. But there's also just like, there are things outside of the skill at the job where, like, being on time or knowing how to work with your coworkers, things like that you have learned how to do well over time.
And how to just complete a task, like, fully.
Yeah.
Asking
for help. Those are all things that you're trained in school.
Yeah.
So that,
Well, I don't want to take us off topic, but just because you mentioned it, and how do you guys feel about the way the school system is set up?
I feel as though the way the school system is going now is like, it's kind of scary for when I don't have kids, but when I do have kids, I'm like, what are my kids going to be learning now? With this, like, the whole thing with the sexuality and male, female, I don't know, unicorn. My mother said she was in class and this girl said, I identify as a unicorn. And it was just like, you have a child. What do you want your child to identify if you're a unicorn?
Like she was being dead serious.
She was being dead serious, and that's the thing. I was like, okay, if you're joking, that's one thing, but if you're dead serious, like,
Those came back, guys. I think
After they go get Robert.
I think that's something that of course, with anything you give people an inch to, people will take a mile, but that doesn't take away from the necessity for
Right.
having people feel confident and comfortable in what they are, who they are, who they choose to be. So yes, there are those people who will run a mile. I saw something the other day talking about people identifying as seasons or something, and that's just something where people. I don't think that's real, but
So
that's
what-
something where just like especially
the season.
exactly, and I think that's the challenge of information. Just kind of going back to school and access to knowledge and what's real and true. There's a I can't think of the right word, but basically where like people have just taken the value out of everything. So even if you choose to be Christian or your religion, there's always going to be someone that's taking advantage of it. That's going to take it too far. That's going to
see it from a different
Opinionated.
yeah. So even with your opinions, but there could be the person that just tries to devalue your experience, and so I think all of that is important in teaching kids about how to engage in the world, but then also just recognizing that, like, being able to identify your gender as who you are, who you feel comfortable being, is something that is important to allow people to do. Just like you choose to be an athlete, you choose to be whoever you want to be. Those all things have value in how you show up in the world, and so I think there's just always the thing that scares me about the school systems today is that there are no controls over that. As far as there's no limits, but then and the fact that there's no limit, then people view it as like, well, there's no limit, so now we shouldn't deal with it at all. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there was value in it at some point. And so just looking at, or the people that is valuable too. So even now, they talk about not talking about slavery or not talking about racism or all of that in schools and pulling that out of books and in Florida and Texas and things like that. And I think even with that, or DEI, the conversation about diversity and equity and inclusion, there is a time where it's always important to discuss those things. Right. But then you also have that group of people that's like, well, it's so overused, now it doesn't matter anymore. And so I think with anything, it can be taken out of context and the value can be removed from it. And I think that's what scares me most about the education system, that even when I was in school, we had to check our resources, and like Wikipedia wasn't one that really counted, and now it's like, oh,
anything goes.
Wikipedia is in and it's allowed, okay. Yeah. And so like the standards are changing for the people who set the standards, and so that's what scares me.
Well, I feel you on all that. I think for me, I'm disappointed in what they choose to teach our kids versus what we should be teaching our kids. Like, I am at this place where my kids are in public school. Like, we got one in public, one in private. There's no real big difference in what they're learning, in my opinion, and how they're learning. Private, I just feel, provides a safer environment, for lack of better words. Well, that's how I feel. The private school is just providing him a safer environment. I don't have to worry about him fighting or somebody stabbing him or something like that happening in the environment, because it's just not tolerated. Versus if I send him to a public middle school here in this area, who knows what's going to happen to my son. However, what they're learning is not what I think is going to make them the most successful person they can be. And I think it's by design. We're not taught
the
right things in school.
It's not taught how to be independent, not taught how to be...
Not taught about, how to keep a home. Mm-hmm. The things that you need to know as a homeowner are important. When you get out of high school and go to college, or leave college and decide that you want to get your own place.
Mhm.
If you wait till you're 21 to all of a sudden start thinking about your credit score and think about how you can purchase a home, you put yourself behind the 8 ball.
Mhm.
So understanding financial literacy from a lens of how am I gonna take care of myself once I get out of school. What does it look like? What is it to have a bank account? Do I need a bank account? Should I have insurance? Should I have set up a bank account by now? And am I saving, or am I investing my money into some type of stock option or into real estate, or these things? If we were to teach our kids, especially I would say starting in middle school, to understand how to manage money, how to have a conversation, how to walk into a room and start a conversation with a stranger, to get to know someone better, what kind of questions they should be asking. I think those are some of the things that are missing in the school environment. I think if we're going to take our kids away from their home environment for 6 to 7 hours of the day, a lot of these things should be a part of the curriculum that they're engaging in.
12 years.
What does it look like to cook? You know, for 12
years. That's a long time.
They took home ec out of the schools. They stopped. There was a time when you had a whole bunch of extracurricular activities that supported physical education, that supported you moving and exercising, and they wonder why we're overweight, why our children are coming out and they're considered obese, because they don't have that physical activity happening like it should. What is 30 minutes on the playground going to do for any kid, right?
And I think that's one of the challenges, and just kind of thinking about the parent partnership with the education system, or parent control over the education system. A lot of stuff is removed because the people who speak the most, or who show up at things the most, have to say, and then that's what ends up changing. So there's the parent that's like, well, my kid doesn't feel comfortable with this, or my kid, shouldn't be learning this. I want them to learn this, that, and the other. And they're the ones that are showing up, so they're the ones that are getting the standards and policies changed. And so it's figuring out that voice. And if we are all talking about the challenges in the school system, how do we show up to make those changes that we want to see? Because I have plenty of conversations about the same stuff, but there are only pockets where it's actually happening, and people aren't necessarily, like, you're involved in the community, so you're showing up at stuff, but a lot of people are going to complain and stay at home and not do anything to change it. And so
I wouldn't even say they're staying at home, because a lot of these people they would love to come and have a conversation, but then that means less food, on the table, or a bill not getting paid because now they got to go to school or go, to some meeting that's keeping them from work.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot that happens after school. I understand that it's tiring to have to come home and deal with that. Yeah. People are still not voting. People are still not. So I think there's still the opportunity, because yes, it's work after work, but everyone has to do work after work. If you're showing up to football practice, basketball practice, going to all the games, drive them everywhere, spending all the money on that, then you can come to a parent-teacher conference.
And I think we're talking about a different parent at that point too. Yeah. Because if they're showing up for all that, I feel like they'll be showing up for the other things as well. And I think a parent-teacher conference is a different conversation than us going to, say, a community meeting
or community meeting
that's going to change, the direction of the laws and everything that has, the policies and procedures that are, that are guiding what's happening in the school system.
So I guess speaking to that, though, if practice is after school, or this, that, and the other is after school, then, and these are often after school, then you can get to that too, if it matters.
If that's what you're showing up for.
Yeah,
right.
That's what you.
Yeah.
If you
can show up for the school game, you can show up for this after school meeting.
After school meeting,
I got
school board meeting that happens once a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think though we all have the opportunity to show up, I think it's important for us to take things into our own hands.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to my kids, though I'm having this conversation and my kid's still in public school and I still have one in private school, this time next year that won't be the case, because I've made up my mind to take my kids out of the public school system, as well as this private school, and homeschool them and make sure that they get exactly what it is they need to get. So it's again, it just becomes, what are you willing to do?
Yeah, what you have the resources to do.
What do you have the resources to do? But at the time, and a lot of times we think it costs a lot of money to homeschool your kids, or to make change that looks like what you want it to look like. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. It's not the financial resources; it's the community resources that you need. So having the right environment, the right people around you to support what it is that you need, who are like-minded, makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So, Auntie, but do you think if you homeschool them, it decrease their social life?
I was just about to ask
Nope.
that question.
You don't think so?
Well, it just depends on which way you go about it. So there are environments where you got kids who are at home, and when you see them out in the street, you can tell they ain't been nowhere but at home. However, the communities I was just talking about, if you put your kids in a homeschooling community where they're meeting up, they're still doing sports, they're going on trips together. The only difference is almost like COVID forced us to be in a somewhat of a homeschool environment with the support of the teachers, maybe on the computer. And that's exactly what it's going to look like for my boys. They're going to be online, they're going to be learning different things, but we are going to be a part of a homeschooling community that meets on a regular basis. So they're still going to be getting that community, that social interaction with kids their age. They still have their friends that, that they are in the neighborhood. They're still going out to events, and they'll still be participating in sports. So I think they'll still have that balance of social interaction. It'll be more controlled, of course.
Limited,
yeah, it'll definitely be more limited. However, I think that's a good thing, because there's a lot of things my kids are being exposed to on a social level in public school that I would never expose them to myself. So that's one of the reasons why I want to take them out and do that.
But the thing, it kind of sounds like you want to hide them from the world.
Not at all.
Am I wrong? I'm wrong?
I don't want to hide them. I think it could be perceived that way, but what I want to do is protect them. I want to protect their mindset. I want to protect the environment I want to control the environment that they're in right now, because, like I said, the violence that's taking over our community is something that I am trying to, one, not necessarily limit their view or scope or understanding of what's happening, but I don't want them to be in the midst of it. So we can talk about the things that are happening out in the community. We can talk about when, you hear someone talking about, oh, their friend got shot, what that looks like or what that experience could have been. We can have conversations about all the things that are popping up, but I don't want them to experience it. I don't want them to have to come home and be like, Mom, oh, this boy pulled out a gun in school today and I almost lost my life. I don't want that. I don't want that to be a conversation that my kid has to have. And unfortunately, that is some of the experiences that they're having. It's too many school shootings happening. It's too many school stabbings. It's all these mass fights and stuff that's happening. And I don't want, and I have the capacity and the resources to say I can pull my kids away. A lot of parents don't.
And that's what I was going to say. So since this podcast is for the general public, like for parents who don't have that opportunity to pull their kids away from it, because like I'm a product of public schools that was an environment like that, but there were things that my parents did at home to make sure I'm aware of how to engage with those things, how to handle myself. I was involved in church, I was involved in different things outside of that, but I wonder, what are things that you all think that parents can do to kind of protect their kids if they don't have the capacity or the opportunity to pull them from that environment?
Yeah.
What do you guys, or even for you guys, like, how are you raised in a way, like you're all doing pretty well? How were you raised that kind of helped you, or what are the things that you feel like could have been done to protect you from those things or help you learn how to engage better?
I feel like the path that is set out for you is set out for you regardless, But I feel like as a parent, the parent's role to they can't prevent, but they can always be in their kid's ear. Oh, tell me about your day at school. Tell me, rather than just be like, oh, go in the house, do your homework, see you at dinner time, and not talk about nothing. Parents really have to be active in their child's life to really understand what's going on and understand their child's feelings, because children do have feelings too. And sometimes as parents, we be so caught up. Well, not we. I'm not a parent.
Say you want that?
It won't be me. But
Not before marriage,
yeah,
right?
not before marriage.
There you go.
But as parents, you have to be active in your kids' life in
Yeah.
order to understand them and understand what they go through, because you're not there, so all you know is what they tell you.
And I will add that I'm glad you brought that up, because the conversations that I'm having with Robert and Khalilah is another reason why I'm like, okay, they need to be home, because Robert comes home upset about school every single day, and Robert's the one that's in public school. He's trying to stay home every chance he gets. Now he's the one that gets the good grades, and he's real, outgoing and don't mind playing with people, but he would rather be home all day. And it's not because he wouldn't learn or, have education. It's just that he comes home exhausted. And Khalil is the same. However, when it comes to grades, he's the opposite. He's like the one that you have to stay on and be in his ear and making sure that he turns in his homework. He can do his work and then still won't even turn it in. So he needs that someone over his shoulder to make sure he gets all the assignments and things done. So the home environment for me provides me an opportunity, one, to spend more time with them, but also to ensure that they get the lessons learned that I feel they need to be successful entrepreneurs. I don't believe the school system is set up for our kids to be entrepreneurs. Our school system is set up for our kids to work for someone else.
In the 9 to 5.
Do you understand?
Yeah,
So, and that's the biggest thing for me.
The purpose for why it was set up was because at that point, parents are working in factories. So one, they needed people somewhere for the kids to go during the day while the parents are working, but also we needed you to understand bells and seats and assignments, so that when you come out of the system, we're preparing you for that workplace.
Yeah, and
I think it worked well for that setting, but they didn't transition with us when as a world,
right? Yeah, and so with that, it's just, it is my desire for my kids to set up their own businesses, to hire other people in the community, and just continue on with the legacy that me and their dad have put in place.
I feel as though with social media now, the way social media is now, you can be homeschooled and still have a good interaction with the public.
Okay.
Which is now that I'm thinking about, like, okay, how are they gonna, like, it's a different type of interaction. Like when I go out, like let's just say I want to go out for the weekend with my friends. 9 out of 10, I see somebody I know. So I'm like, how would they get that interaction because they're at home? But it's like, okay, social media. They might know somebody who they see on social media and things of that sort, which is good. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and I will say from social media's perspective, like when you think about it, the interactions that you have on social media are not going to look like it looks for me and you, to be, personal, up in each other's face, smelling each other's breath, right? So it's important for me that they do get those types of opportunities. So that's why I want to make sure that they still are engaged in some kind of sports activities where, they're able to be out in the community and getting that the interaction with kids that aren't in their same environment, because you are the sum of your environment. A lot of people don't really understand that, but the people that you hang around what you hang around is what you're gonna be. Your environment is gonna design and develop your habits. I truly believe that. So if you are not in 8 hours or 7 hours a day in the right environment with the right people with the right mindsets, you may develop some habits, or take on some habits that they have that your parents would have never thought of, or you're trying to figure out why they doing this. I ain't never done it. They ain't seen this at home. But look, they're at school 7 hours a day, sitting next to some kid who,
But I think there's also positive sides of that too, where people pick up good habits.
Well,
when they're in
that's
that
true.
environment.
I mean,
So
I think it's both
but I mean,
sides of the
the
coin.
conversation is not necessarily about what's better or not. But I think, just going back to resources or suggestions for parents. So you're saying engaging, making sure you know what's going on in your kid's life if their school day, and just thinking about how to, just how to guide them. I think it goes back to
Yeah.
having those conversations from the early age so they know what to look for, what to avoid, who to avoid,
Yeah.
Just a simple question of
Yeah.
how was your day?
How was your day?
Sitting at the dinner table together and it not being, well, you got your food, now go to the room, but just, creating opportunities to
Yeah.
be in community with your family,
Gotcha,
knowing
gotcha.
what's going on.
So
in
social
their
media
world.
being one of those opportunities for your kids to interact with other people.
So speaking of social media, when do you think is the appropriate age for your child to be on social media? When is the appropriate age do you think it's good for your child to have a phone or an iPad? So for your child to be on technology.
I feel like once they get to school, like not like younger age, of course, probably like middle school. Only because it's just like if something were to happen, you want them to reach out to you. Like you can also look at it as that way as well. It's not always about social media or what they can do on the phone. It's how they can contact you as well. So I feel like that's definitely the right age for it and everything.
You know, flip phone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Flip phone at recess trying to play the game, the one little game that I could download.
It was like what, Tetris or
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
like a block game and like a ball would move around. That definitely started off like a little mini squid. It was
the Blackberry.
Blackberry.
Yeah, it was close to.
Well, my oldest son didn't get a phone till he was 12.
I think I didn't get a phone.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and then Khalil got a phone right when middle school started, which he turned 12 a few months later. Because I wanted him to have a phone in school, for those exact reasons. And they needed to have a device in the private school to do work and take notes and to be able to research and stuff like that. So I just decided to get him a phone. Robert is 10 and he's about to get a phone for his birthday. And it's more so for him to be able to communicate with us when he goes to his friends or for him to play video games and stuff. iPad, on the other hand, my kids have had an iPad as long as I can remember, because we used iPad for like ABC Mouse and learning tools when they first started. But as they got older, I allowed them to get on YouTube Kids, and now they're mature enough to pick out different things, and then we had conversations about what's appropriate, what's not. Khalil is the one who, from an early age, if a video game or somebody on YouTube was cussing all the time, he'd know not to watch that and to turn it off because that was always the conversation. And Robert is the same now. So that's how I've done it.
So what about for social media?
I guess it just depends on what it looks like. Because I feel like I know I'm associating YouTube with social media, but I think social media for y'all is more like what, Instagram or
TikTok. Well, TikTok kids can't really be on TikTok.
Yeah, so my kids don't have TikTok accounts. My kids don't get on Instagram, and it's not because I've censored them or kept it away from them. It's just not an interest of theirs. YouTube has been a big part of their lives. Netflix and YouTube. And again, we monitor, like I said, what they're doing by just paying attention and engaging them in conversation around what they're watching.
So what ages did y'all start getting on social media?
I don't understand why.
Yeah, since I was young, like I always still, even though they said don't do it, I still do it.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can only guide your children to a certain extent. They're still gonna do what they want to do at the end of the day. You can catch them, but it's like now it's to a point where on Instagram you can have set on there like parental like provisions and stuff like that. You can you can do that to where like you can monitor it or you can block from what you don't want them to see.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, to me, I honestly don't care about it. Like, as long as, I get that option to block them for what I don't want them to see.
Back in my day. No, so our social media, like, it was a lot of like chat rooms or AIM, AOL Instant Messenger. So that was definitely middle school, but mostly it was with friends, but there were opportunities. I think that's the thing with social media now is that the internet then was way less regulated too, but now it's truly, truly wide open where you can access anybody from anywhere. I think there were like parental blocks that could be put, but of course it gets to a point where kids know how to get around that stuff too.
Yeah.
And so, but I think again, it's just about the conversations around what's safe and what's not. If you don't feel comfortable, don't continue with it. And just being able to, and when that interest comes around, being able to, have the conversation around safety. And
I was on a plane recently coming from LA, and there was a couple. There's had two little kids. I think two girls. They looked like they could be twins. The plane ride was 6.5 hours long, and the whole 6.5 hours, the two girls were tied to their iPads. Like they didn't get up to use the bathroom. They weren't crying, weren't whining. You didn't hear a word from them. And they had the earphones and the iPad in front of them. And at the end of the flight, I had, said to the mom, I said, I'm just so, amazed that you've got these two young kids who, they've got their iPads in front of them and they are just silent, like zoned in. And she said they are a missionary family and they travel a lot. And the only time they allow the kids to get on the iPad is when they're in the airplane. So it's a treat for them. So because they only get it when they're on the it's 100% they locked in. And that's why they got the experience that they have on the plane, and people can enjoy their flight without their kids being a mess. So I thought that was fairly interesting. And she also said that they homeschool, so I can understand why they probably don't have the iPads during during the day or during the week. So that's another thing that people could do if they chose to limit iPad access or make sure they don't give their kids phones too early.
So we touched on a lot of different topics. You want to wrap it up?
Oh, sure. We can wrap it up. So I know for me, if there was anything that you guys wanted to share as it relates to this topic, as it relates to family values or the soft parenting, if there's one thing you wanted to leave people with, what would it be?
Treat your child how you would want to be treated.
I like it. I like it.
Love them correctly, so that way they'll know and grow to be, the best of themselves.
Don't try to mold your child to be you. Let your child be their own person. Let them experience life and understand life for what it is. I don't like when parents be like, I'm gonna send my kids straight to the NBA. I'm gonna send them straight to do this, and they just mold them their whole life without really letting them live life for themselves. But
yeah, and I think similarly, mine would be get to know your kid and who they are, and not who you want them to be or who you feel like they should be, because I think they should have their opportunity to develop their personalities and interests and things like that. And so I think it's really making time to get to know your kid.
Yes. Well, they pretty much, everyone said what I would say. If I have anything to add, it's just communication. Listen with your whole heart. Always be available. You don't want your child to ever say, oh my gosh, I don't want my mom to find out about this. You want their response to be, oh my gosh, I need to call my mom to see how I get out of this or how I deal with this.
Dad.
Or dad, but I'm a mom, so I want my baby to always call me. But yes, so you want the conversation to always be, how can I call or connect with my parents so I can figure this out versus, oh no, if they find out about this, I'm going to die. So communication, keep the doors open. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this content. We here at the Social Changemakers podcast love to hear from the voices of our young people. We've got a mixed bag today. I'm the oldest at the table, but we do, we've got some young folk and some people in between. But it's very important that we provide an opportunity for our young people to share their voice and share what they think about the topics of today. So if you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and share this out. And until next time, Social Changemakers Podcast signing out.